Free your mind now. Be part of People's Pan-African Parliament, the Pan-African Pyramid Debate with your speaker, Andrew Irumba Katusabe.
Welcome back. Welcome to yet another edition of the Pan-African Pyramid Show here at Fairway Hotel. We're always here on Fridays from 5 to 8 p.m. and a recorded version with the same runs on Saturday from 4 p.m. on NBS TV. We are powered by NBS TV, Fairway Hotel, and the Spa Uganda. I would like also to report to you that we launched a membership card. This membership card is going to work as your identification card in the Pan-African circles. I would like to start like this, ladies and gentlemen. European Union recently said that the EACOP, East African Crude Oil Pipeline, should stop on account of only two things, which are very critical. There are two, but they are very critical. Number one, it's on the account of human rights violations, isn't it? Number two is on account of environmental protection. Professor Alenyo, George William.
Right Honorable Speaker, President Museveni is being fought by Europeans for his stand on the Ukrainian-Russian war.
Oh.
And this European Parliament resolution is the beginning of embargo sanctions on the economy of Uganda. To destroy the East African community and to destroy the East African community oil pipeline. Not so? The East African Community Federation, that's the political one. And two, the East African Community Oil Pipeline on the economic side. These are the two things. So the enemies who want to attack Museveni see that if they attack these two, they will have politically finished him. Okay? And that's my thesis. So I'm going to defend that. The European Union is set to block this pipeline for political reasons. What are the political reasons? And this is where the president must become clear when he's talking to Ugandans. The reason number one why the European Union cannot give Uganda any dollar to that East African oil pipeline is the presence of two countries. Number one, the presence of China. Sinok. There's a company called Sinok. It is owning 40% in this pipeline. People, you know that the tension between Europe and Russia has also got China in the background also. Do you think that the European Union will give you money so that you give some of the money to China? European Union, to fund this project, which has 40% China. Then, Russia, the refinery. We are talking here of the pipeline, but before the oil comes to the pipeline, where does it start? In the refinery. Not so? There are Russian companies, which this government of Uganda has given contracts in the oil sector. Can Europe at this moment give any dollar which will end up in Russian hands? Surely? No. And that's what I'm telling you, that if the president were to be honest and tells us the problem he's facing, which he knows, we would go somewhere. What's the way forward? Remove Russian companies from the oil sector.
That is the way forward you're giving?
Yeah. Remove the Russian companies from the oil sector.
Or whose interests?
No, if you don't want to remove the Russian companies, but you want money from European Union, you'll go nowhere. If you leave the Russian companies, then go and get the money from Russia. If you don't want to remove Chinese companies, and China and America are conflicting, get the money from China. Yes, and if you don't do that as a country, then let us fund our oil.
But then why don't they state so, Professor?
No.
No, what you're saying, you're giving a solution.
Yes.
But now you are suggesting a solution to somebody who is actually presenting a different problem.
Let
me understand that the problem is China here.
That's what I
And then
told
we
you.
deal with it.
I think the audience, you bear me witness. What did I say at the beginning? I said politicians, they don't tell us the truth which they know, which is inside, they discuss behind closed doors. But here they come to talk to us. You saw the Wazungu are disturbing me. They are disturbing me. I'm President Museveni, they are disturbing. Why are they disturbing you?
You tell us.
Because you have involved Russia in your oil, you have involved China in your oil, and then you want European money. The two can't meet.
Now we get you.
Yes,
Let's go to
and this is in my discussion.
Yes.
So if you get a copy of my discussion. So what should we do? Today is an independence discussion debate. Not so?
60 years of independence.
60 years of independence.
Coincidental.
If you are, and Uganda, in the Bible, a nation is a person. Not so? You remember Jacob was called Israel, and Israel became a nation. If you want to understand the nation properly, contextualize it as a person. Assuming Uganda was a person, at 60 years old, you're still crying for someone to fund your oil. You are cooking oil in your saucepan. You are crying for another person. It's a shame. Uganda is 60 years old now. And the word independence, we said we are independent. Not so. So why are we crying that the European Union has refused to fund us? What's about our independence? So, the government of Uganda, even before they started the oil issue, should have funded this project by our money. Right Honorable Speaker, in Africa here we had a very great leader who was fought more than Museveni.
I mean,
no, Gaddafi.
okay.
Gaddafi was fought more than Museveni. The Europeans did not want to give Gaddafi money for oil. But Gaddafi formed what we call sovereign fund. And instead of Museveni crying over why European Union cannot give him money, why don't we have our sovereign fund as a nation? As Libya did. Because wherever Gaddafi would go, they would not give him money. They would say this man is going to develop Libya. So he created what they call sovereign fund. Why don't we have a sovereign fund as Ugandans? We are concentrating on eating our money and wasting it. Then we go to cry, we go on to cry to the European Union. That's bad. Because if every Ugandan was committed to a poll tax, and if every Ugandan was encouraged to buy shares in a sovereign fund, we would get the money. We would get the money to fund our oil. It's a big shame on the 60th anniversary for Uganda to be lamenting. I saw the way the Minister of Education or Uganda National Students Association mobilized our students whom we sent to go to school. They were instead mobilized to come to the streets of Kampala, that they are demonstrating that the Europeans have refused to fund our oil. What a shame. And what culture are we telling these children? What culture are we passing on to our children? That the Wazungu, since independence, 60 years ago, they are still the ones responsible for our funding us? No. The Right Honorable Speaker, I would like to begin by defining the following keywords in my presentation. The word independence and European Union. Even without going to the dictionary meaning, the word independence comes from the word independent, which means not relying on or being controlled, moved or influenced by another. In the 1960s, several African countries began self-governance and self-determination. The colonial European governments began to give our people the freedom to govern themselves as opposed to being governed by colonial governments. This entailed the freedom to decide on what to do with our resources and how to fund our developments, not so? Yet there are other words that we would have chosen to define our status. We could have called our freedom self-government. We could have called it sovereign acquisition or self-determination. But because in the diaspora, Africans in Europe and America were fighting racism, the African states, on getting their right to sovereignty and self-government, they decided to call their freedom independence. See? The selection of this word had racial undertones, Mr. Speaker. It meant that the newly free African states were saying that from then on, they were going to be and act independent from their white European colonial masters. I see? So if you're an African president, and you are celebrating 60 years of what? Independence, then you have a right to be independent of the white colonial masters. How has Uganda's oil gone to the European Union? How did it get there even? How? How does it get there? As an African president, I'm not ashamed to start talking about Europeans disturbing you. Yet they have given you independence. What was the meaning of independence? You are free to even not give visas to Europeans to step in Uganda. We have the right to deny European Union, all over European Union, the right to come to Africa. And also, we have the right to say, don't even fund us any coin. Not so. If you have got your money from Russia, does it matter what European Union is saying? Does it? If you have got your money from your own bank account, does it matter the human rights issue they say? Because even as you rightly said, more people died on the streets of Kampala. 30, and you said another group died. But do you know that the other sectors are being funded? Yesterday, did they give money to fund some sectors? So that also shows you that it is not human rights. If it were human rights stopping funding, they would not fund any other thing. But they're funding small other incompetent things. They are being funded. Yesterday, they gave 780 million for fighting some diseases. Then they are giving for roads. So that tells you that the one particular project they don't want to fund is the oil one with Russia and China. I see my point? Do you now agree? The one project they don't want to fund is the one project which has China and Russia.
Okay, now, because we need to start wrapping up.
Yes.
Now, you have given one solution, that if Uganda still needs European money,
yes,
please do away with China and Russia. That's one solution. Do you have any other?
Yes.
Number two.
You can retain them. You can retain them if you're a friend of China and Russia, but use the sovereign fund. Create a sovereign fund. Create a sovereign what? Fund. Where Ugandans own this oil. You say those who can buy into this fund shares of 1 million, raise up your what? Hand. I want, for example, all the MPs instead. Last time the MPs were crying in parliament, no, the Europeans, this is colonialism. No. How much are you MPs ready to put on the table from your big salary to fund this project? Not so. Even 10 million. Can they put it instead of complaining? Can't we now go then to the Ugandans until we get the Ugandan who can now pay 10,000 shillings for half a share in the Providence Fund, so that we own the project? By the way, when the Europeans give money for this pipeline, they then own it. That's why they take the contracts, all the contracts, they take all the jobs. No, so? So why can't we fund it? Then we take all the jobs, and then we take all the contracts. But I was saying, just to summarize, then I was saying, the independence we never got. Actually, the word independence is misleading, because we remained interdependent or dependent on Europe. We remained part of the British Commonwealth. The others who were colonized by France remained part of the Anglophone. So, politically, we never got independence, because even the Independence Constitution of 1962 was given at Lancaster House in London.
Not in Africa.
Not in Africa, and it had a clause that over the Lost Counties of Union, they knew that after 2 years it would explode, and it did explode. So political independence we didn't have. Social independence we didn't have because we remained part of the Commonwealth. Economic independence we didn't have. We remained funded by IMF and World Bank. That's why every time you hear an African budget, they say, the Minister of Justice or Finance will say, I'm expecting to raise 20% from my revenue authority, and I'm expecting donor funds of 20 million. The moment you're expecting donor funds, you're not independent. Because a donor is a donor. Employer, employee, you know that term. So, every budget, every speech we make in the financial year, we announce that we are not independent. That's why, yes.
It comes from the national budget even.
Yes. You even get the budget of this year, even get the speech of the Minister of Finance. You will hear him saying, I expect our development partners, the donors, to give this amount. But have you ever heard any European country saying, I expect Africa to contribute this amount?
So now, so we are celebrating 60 years. Is this what they call Yoyabianso in Uganda?
Exactly.
We are not independent, but interdependent on the European.
Exactly. Even some places dependent on them. If there is any African country.
Therefore, if we are interdependent on them, we have independence on our EACOP project.
We don't. That's why you see a president like Museveni has his East African COP line, but his whole heart is waiting for what the European Parliament is saying. What his own Parliament is saying does not matter, because there is no money. Right Honorable Speaker, you see this project is the longest pipeline in the world.
In the world, yes.
And when you had someone telling President of France that it is the longest in the world, second to that of Russia, which means if we succeed in putting it right,
up and running,
we would be at maybe the third largest oil producer. Because it's a matter of now.
You see, they have started comparing us with Russia.
Exactly.
We are second to Russia.
Yes. So now.
So that one is also a problem.
Exactly. So now, if the president knows that this thing I want to do is going to put me at a very competitive level, then you better fund it yourself. There is no enemy of yours who is going to give you money. Especially Europe, when the name Russia is there. What if, you know that currently, wherever China is, after a short while you hear that the oil pipeline has been sold. Like
sold.
Airport. Yeah, you can, I'm telling you, you're hearing this all over Africa. Airports are being sold, not so? African airports being taken over by China. So, what if after European Union has funded the thing, there are financial issues and China takes it over, the longest pipeline? So the Europeans cannot be easy with any project mentioning China, that they give money in the hands of China. Please, that one. However, Museveni is a good man, he's fighting for Americans in Somalia, where, yes. But that one, the Europeans to give their money to pass via Museveni to China and to Russia, that's not going to happen. And when you have also situations, you see also, there was a tweet which affected this matter. The tweet of Muhozi, where he said, if Europeans, you attack Russia, you will have attacked what?
Africa.
What about if you Europeans, you fund Russia? What would you have done? Did he answer that in the tweet? You tell the Europeans that if you attack Russia, you will have attacked Africa. So, if we fund your father's project, which has Russia, what shall we have done to ourselves? Did he answer that?
So it has reached that far?
Yes.
But why is the president not telling us the truth?
Because, as Obama said, African leaders and leaders in the world, they don't tell the truth.
Thank you so much, Professor. Thank you so much, Professor Dr. William Alenyo.
Ladies and gentlemen, in your respective designations, my name is Nkwanga Michael. I bring you warm and lovely greetings from Chambogo University. Fellow young people, the notion we are discussing today is not even about EACOP, the European Parliament, or the government of Uganda. This is about we, the young people, that are entrusted with the future of this country. The notion today is about interests. The Right Honorable Deputy Speaker of Parliament, Thomas Tayewa, attributes the EU resolution to imperialism and neocolonialism. But we as young people, we should be asking that when they borrow huge loans, don't they look at that as neocolonialism? While they attach themselves to these organizations that are basically promoting imperialism, then it does not suffice. It is when they have a push and pull, basically on interest, that they're choosing to look that direction. We are talking about a pipeline where the largest shares are going to be owned by Total. Aren't you going to discuss profit repatriation? All the parties that attribute to this discussion are not looking that direction. And people do not want to discuss the fact that the finances, part of the finances that are going to be used in this project are going to be borrowed. Fellow Ugandans, you and I are going to have a part in repayment of this debt burden. If you ever doubt the authenticity of the European Union involvement and their resolution per se, we should be careful enough to understand that in the modern day world, countries operate on international guidelines, and these are bound to certain treaties, and that is a fact for sure. I may not as well agree that looking at environmental ethics is reason enough for the European Union to put a stop on EACOP. But as young people, we want to say it is very catastrophic and cataclysmic if such...
The first one I understood, the second one.
Cataclysmic? Yes. Cataclysmic comes from a catastrophe.
So you're saying the same one?
Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly.
This one. I was bringing this for the Frank.
The outcomes of these projects, if unguided, have their impact on nature. And then can we look at the number of people that are going to be displaced? Right, Honorable Speaker, I beg to cite an example. That when they were building an airport, the Kabale International Airport in Hoima, over 7,000 people were displaced. 3,500 of these were women. The aggrieved people filed a case that was in 2012, and up to now, the case has not been resolved. When you check the website of Uganda Chamber of Mines, they have uploaded a series of houses they are claiming these are going to be occupied by the people that are being evicted. You and I will be shocked that these houses, many of them are actually in existence. Also, the inconsistencies and irregularities on the environmental impact assessment of the oil and gas industry that are being manned by the Petroleum Authority of Uganda. Even civil societies are complaining that they are not putting out information in regards to this notion for public use. How is a lay Ugandan like you and I supposed to assess? The most disgusting bit is there is a group of mendacious, shonky snolly ghosters.
Huh?
A group of mendacious, shonky snolly ghosters.
Those are also Ugandan.
That have gone as far as...
I don't get this.
Yes, we are getting to them. This group has gone as far as involving primary and secondary school students in a matter where they have no knowledge about. The people that paraded secondary school students in a matter they are not well equipped about and drove them to the roads for protests. I want to think that if anybody is mentally upright, on scrutiny, would be asking what animates and what factualizes WUNSA as a students' movement, if that is their way of doing things. Right, Honorable Speaker, I want to report to you, sir, that a group of university students that sat down and wrote a petition to the European Union Embassy were arrested, and as we talk today, they are in Luzira.
Are you serious?
Yes. What is the justification that once I had the audacity to involve primary and secondary students in a protest, and they were guarded by police and nothing was done? Nobody is castigating. Do you imagine the pain of a parent that moils and toils through hook and crook? They're at their workplace and their child is on the road protesting over an issue they are not informed about? That is exactly where we are.
UNSA is Uganda National Students
Uganda
Association.
National Students Association.
I get it.
No action has been taken. For the people that claim that...
So that's also a violation of human rights.
Exactly. For the people that claim to love this country more than we do, stop thinking there is going to be anything different about development in regards to this oil. I want to ask, what happened to the gold? What happened to the copper? What happened to our cobalt? What happened to the pearl of Africa? Or should we be honest enough to even begin telling our children what used to be the pearl of Africa turned into the sick man of Africa? Should we go that direction? I even cannot stop thinking that if you give a desert to this government, after 2 years, the desert will run out of sand. That is where we are now.
Really?
Yes.
Like Victoria still has what?
How we learned about all this, the mismanagement and the poor leadership. There are lots of things that are unsaid. Lastly, as I conclude, the way things are done is actually the problem. If I ask the question, do you first borrow or you get indented, get soaked in debts until you actually go for help? Because what happens first is I fail to manage my finances, I fail to manage everything I have entirely, before I make a run to the right honorable speaker to tell him, excuse me sir, this and this is happening in my home state. If you have 100,000, please help me with it. People do not want to discuss poor leadership. People do not want to talk about the management. This is how we are arriving at this entire saga. Lastly, the solution to this problem should have been a long-term solution. Right, Honorable Speaker, sir, education. For the many platforms that you and I have been, and for the following that we have actually done, majority of the people that are discussing this topic are raw, uninformed, and discussing it from a very peculiar point of view.
Mind now, free your mind now.
You know where the
Free
problem
your
is
mind
coming
now.
from? That African states are not investing enough in education. Make a random sample, go to your university, meet people on the road and ask them what's EACOP. Simply, they do not know, including members of parliament. I will not do name shaming, but there is one I have actually interfaced on a similar topic, and trust me. Thank you very much for your time.
I have been following most of the revolutionaries we have in Uganda, and several of them we have that are African by descent and by birth. And I've learned one thing about the former president Thomas Sankara. In 1983, he was criticizing the aspects that were happening in the Africa that were imposed by the imperialists. And he had this to mention that everyone knows that he who feeds you controls you.
Yeah.
I can't imagine why a man in his late age right now, the president of Uganda, has failed to conceptualize such kind of aspects. He's surrounded by all the think tanks we have, very many great lawyers in Uganda. If they brought a list of the people that advise the president, you'd be shocked. It's like a quarter of this population. But you can't imagine we failed to comprehend and understand put on paperwork, internalize all the clauses within the treaties we sign with other countries. This is the reason why the country like Uganda is now in crisis. I can assure you.
Okay, thank you.
Now,
Finally.
you've given me this little time, but I thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you very much. I will first say, God is good.
All the time.
And all the time.
God is good.
My Muslim friends, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I first put God first because as Africans we were groomed as God-fearing vis-a-vis the religions coming, but we always put forward our gods, even a Muslim or Christian. I'm very proud to be here today. From day one that we started this conversation, and here we are at the East African crude oil pipeline. Every person has spoken what he's spoken, but I'll bring the good news before I move forward. That as Africa, this should be something that should wake us up. As the professor said, can't Africa help itself before it calls other integrations to help itself, Africa itself? Yesterday, Afrexim Bank accepted to fund by $200 million to EACOP, and it confirmed it.
To EACOP?
Yeah. The Islamic Bank.
Exim Bank, that is China.
No, Afrexim. It was. It is a bank that was established in Nigeria in October 1993 by African governments.
So it's an African bank?
Yes.
Okay.
And the Islamic Development Bank today accepted to funding by $100 million, bringing 1.1 trillion funding ready with the African Standard Bank in itself.
Islamic headquartered where?
Islamic, it is, Muslim countries, they form their own umbrella.
Okay.
So it means the funding is there, but the question comes, accountability.
As you finish, we are celebrating 60 years. That is on Sunday, isn't it? Is it right, after 60 years of self-reliance, if it is happening, for European Union sitting in Europe to tell Africa here that please stop there, we shall tell you when to begin again?
I thank you.
I want that to be your last statement.
I thank you on that. But who brought this? There is a quote I made of myself which says that an old wild loose wolf which hunts its fellow jungle species will always be isolated by its own species and the outspace. If the government are treating the other young children, the young people, indifferently in different projects, that means the Wananchi will isolate. They will have to buy the students to come and start rioting because they are not seeing that their interests are being worked on by the government. So if we isolate it, that means the EU will also isolate ourselves because we are not as one. The government is not working on making the people to be together, but by putting their interests at the forefront.
Thank you so much.
If the government puts the reasons of the young people, the reasons of the Wananchi in a one space, that means the voice of Ugandans will be one to the EU. Don't touch our oil.
Thank you so much.
But the voices are in bits. You will find His Excellency Bobby Wine going to the EU, speaking his language. You will find Mugisha Muntu speaking his own language. You will find yourself speaking your own language, and the President speaking his own language. We lack a one voice as Ugandans, and the government should work upon that.
We lack unification.
And lastly, on human rights, I want to quote this. Yesterday, the UN was voting on the resolution about the human rights situation in China's Xinjiang. But the vote didn't go through. But you know what Muslims, Uyghur Muslims are facing? They are being mistreated, but it didn't go through at UN. Why would you talk about human rights when you can't even put a vote of which people are saying to pass through? Clean your house before you ask other people to clean your house. I think.
Mind now. Free your mind now. Free your mind.
Thank you very much, Sir the Speaker. I would start by greeting us all and then tell us something from the Bible. The book of Proverbs 22 verse 7 tells us that the rich rules over the poor and the borrower is a slave to the lender.
Why of all the verses in the Bible you bring that for us?
I would say Uganda has been very dependent on the other countries. That's why countries like, let me say, the European Union has a right, at the moment, we've given it a right to come and have a say in what's happening in our country. I would start by saying if the European Union has issues like the human rights and I would say environmental issues, why can't we as a country first look at the human rights and then, you know, the environmental issues? If we are able to handle these and show these people that we as Ugandans are able to sustain ourselves, we are able to protect our human rights.
Malaysia, to preserve your human rights, do I have to report to an European? Don't I understand that you deserve to live?
But then what
do I have to work to entice the European Union or Whitman to that you see how I'm treating Malaysia? Do I have to, you know, to pay homage to him for me to be able to understand that you have equal rights with me, like me?
I would say we as a country, the former leaders, the current leaders, if they had not given these countries very big importance in the say of whatever happens in these countries, these people will not be coming right now to have a say at the moment when we are having crucial issues like the East African crude oil pipeline. So I would say as a country, we shouldn't take it as a critic. You know, we shouldn't be like these people hate us or they are trying to fight our leadership. I would say let's get something to learn, fight against these human rights. I would say these minor students, the secondary students, the primary students were brought on the streets without the permission of their parents. I don't think their parents were aware that these kids are going to handle such. And then when we have students who are at university, students who are able to think for themselves, these are people who are 18 years and above, when they try to bring a petition to the European Union, with whatever they had to say, whether it should stop the funding or whatsoever, they are arrested brutally. These students right now are in prison. What are we trying to prove to these people? We aren't able to protect our own. And then they're coming in to show us they can protect Ugandans better than us. That's why they're having such issues with us. So I would say, as a country, we should learn to handle our own issues. We should learn to handle human rights. If we are able to handle the human rights, this people wouldn't come out to tell us again.
Actually, I agree with you because one of the points is that human rights violations in Uganda. And now the students who come to show their divergent views about the EACOP, you arrest them, detain them in Russia. That's already, you're confirming what they're actually accusing you about.
Please.
So they are confirming.
Yes.
I agree with you. Would you like to proceed?
Yeah, so I would like to inform us as Ugandans, let's be able to defend ourselves. When we are able to handle issues in our homes, I think these people won't have anything to say here. And then I would say, we as a country are having 15% of our own oil. And we are having people like Total Energies having, is it 62%? How can I have food in my house and then I'm having an employee? You know, I'm employing this person, he's coming to my house, I'm giving you work, and then you're taking a bigger percentage of what's in my home.
So who is an employee then?
I would say, right now, Uganda as a country, we have the resource, and Total Energies is just coming in to assist. That's how it should be. It's not like this people they shouldn't come to be like they are the owners, or they shouldn't own a bigger percentage. Unless the country is able to own a bigger percentage compared to all those people, we aren't willing to let these people exploit our oil. We as Ugandans have a say. These people have to make sure that this oil majorly belongs to Ugandans. It's going to benefit the Ugandans. We can't have 15%. Tanzania that doesn't own the oil is having 15%. And then people from outside Africa actually are going to have 62%. Yes. So what does this show?
Don't fear to mention Total Energy.
So this proves to us that we are complaining that our European Union is interfering in neocolonialism. At the same time, you're giving Total Energies a platform to come and have a say in our own oil. So I would say this country has to learn how to handle its own resources. We as Ugandans have to be employed. I don't think we are going to have major employment opportunities in this exploitation of the oil. You know, we have students who are going to Mbarara University to learn petroleum engineering. Are these students going to be engineers in the exploitation of the oil? Or we are again going to hire people from outside this country to come and start exploiting
do the job
our
on
oil?
your behalf.
Yes, so I believe unless this country is able to stand independently, I would say Uganda right now we aren't independent. The fact that we have people who are coming in this country and having a say, we aren't independent. So not until we have a bigger say in whatever happens in our country, I stand firm and say this oil shouldn't be exploited unless we have a bigger percentage, unless our people are going to be employed, unless the people who are on the borders who are going to be where that pipeline is pressing are going to be compensated fully, and Ugandans are going to benefit more than any other country, more than Tanzania, more than the Total Energies. This oil shouldn't be exploited. Thank you very much.
In 1963, in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, Kwame Nkrumah said, if we leave this platform without uniting together, the Europeans have given us independence from the front door, and they are coming to take it from the behind door. In my submission, I will say, Africa has never been independent. If you want to learn that, you study critically the elements of neocolonialism in Africa. In this case, you can learn about Uganda. If you are independent, why would you go and start crying over European Union? Have they come here to cry maybe about any other issue that they need help from you? So, if someone is feeding you, you are like a small shouting in the wilderness. Even when you make the loudest noise, no one will come to your rescue.
So that is Uganda and Africa?
Uganda and Africa. Oh. Are we thinking rightly? Are we educating people rightly? Are people who are discussing these issues having the credentials? Have they gotten the skills? And even those who have the skills, do we have faith in them?
But do they
if you study,
but do they even have the platform?
Who has the board, the executive board of the petroleum project that is going to be run? Have you seen the names there?
Do they matter really?
They do.
Oh.
These are young people who have been, some of them are older than them.
So what's the problem?
They actually started training them after discovering the oil. Why? The jobs are ready, they are set. Have they advertised those jobs for people to compete on merit? Do we have meritocracy here? Do you see the point of European Union? Do you know anyone who is going to get employed there, or he is actually on the board? Do you know anyone? Do you know anyone from, because I know you are from the various regions, I'm from the West, I don't know anyone.
Hey.
I just hear the names.
Hey. So are they existing or they are not?
Here, we are entrusting people,
because
basing on
Mr.
who knows you, where do you come from.
We are 5 million people.
I'm talking about, the point I'm talking about is transparency. Have people been provided with information to consume it and internalize and conceptualize the impacts? We are talking about environment, what? When did the environment become our biggest question in Africa? The biggest question in Africa is poverty. Ignorance, disease. Kwame Nkrumah said those last 60 years back. But people cannot see it. Young people, let's not be influenced. Let's have the information consumed.
What the whites are exactly fighting in Africa, especially in Uganda, even what the EU is really talking about, is the beauty of Africa. Their major aim is exploiting our resources and making us more poor than we are, so that they can rule us very well. I want to say that in order to solve that, we must stand for Africa and speak like President Museveni is saying. Why do they want to control us over our resources? I want to talk about one thing. For Africa to be independent, and my belief is that up to today we are not independent. For Africa to be independent, we must first build our economy That is, when I talk about economic growth, it is really driven by consumer spending and business investment. What am I talking about? I'm talking about building our own economy so that we don't become dependent on the whites at all time, at any time. And one thing I would like to tell Africans is that as long as we are poor in Africa, we shall always and always depend on whites. Even our children will come and depend on them. What is the solution? The solution should be building our Africa, build our economy through training our own Africans to work on our own land, use our own labor, because even if we have these resources and accept the whites to come and act as and come as people who want to provide labor to Africa, they will still exploit it. Have our own labor, build our Africa, and then after our economy is stable, we shall declare our continent, Africa, as independent. I thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, the Right Honorable Speaker. I'm Aaron Yamukama from MYU. I'll begin to say that these European guys or European countries, they are saying that the major reason why
the president called them girls, so you're calling them guys.
No, the Europeans, they are claiming that they are coming to fight for human rights protection and environmental protection. But I would like to say, even if they come to fight for those two things because of oil, even if they stop the oil, these two things are not going to stop. Because we have not ended politics in Africa, which is the major cause of human violation, we are not going to end environmental protection. Because Africa is still a developing country, we are still constructing roads which are
Africa is a developing continent.
A developing continent. We are still clearing forests to construct roads, to build the infrastructure, different infrastructure. So they should not claim that they are coming because of this.
Okay.
Now what is my say here? First listen to this.
Yes, let's listen to him, gentlemen.
In Africa,
Mr. Fizu, let's listen to the speaker.
In Africa, we have the country that is potentially rich in Africa in terms of minerals. It is Democratic Republic of Congo.
I agree.
And for us Ugandans, we have just started to cry because those Congolese, they have been in this struggle ever since
they have been crying longer.
So these Congolese have their minerals, but they have been denied the right to mine them. What are these Europeans doing? They are keeping constant wars in the Democratic Republic of Congo to divert the Congolese mine from exploiting their resources. So this is the same that is coming to Uganda now. They are diverting us from mining our resources. These Europeans, they came here to colonize us. They found us in peace. They came, they brought their influence here. But when they were leaving, they never left completely. They left us, they left in us something like a root. The France left their, how do they call it? The Anglo, Francophone. The British left Commonwealth. So we are still attached to them. And these people, they don't want
and we are aware that we are attached to them.
Yeah, we are.
And we cannot do anything.
Yeah.
So who's the problem?
The problem is us.
Okay.
We are supposed to detach ourselves from these people, and we continue to do our things.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Now, lastly, I would like to inform where this parliament was in Brussels, in Belgium. That city of Belgium, it is built out of the minerals, out of the money, out of the resources from the Democratic Republic of Congo. These guys, they want us to keep poor so that they can keep rolling us.
Even the parliament where they are seated, it was built on our resources. That's the
city of Brussels.
Where they are sitting.
Yeah.
To decide for Africa.
Yeah.
One of the problems we have even now is the fear to unite Rwanda, Burundi. These are one country. We are one people. Do you believe, Right Honorable Speaker, that Burundi is a different country from Rwanda?
No.
At independence, it was called Rwanda, Burundi. When you go to Kabale, can you really see the boundary? People? No. So as long as we keep Uganda separate, South Sudan separate, these are colonial states. Boundaries. Let's stand one day and say, today, the whole of Africa is one country.
One passport.
Yes, one passport. Actually, Uganda, Africa can be a superpower in one day. Because China is also a continent. Have you ever seen the map of China? It is a continent. So Africa is a continent which should be one country. But they're just dividing us. But the day Africa becomes one country, like China, we are superpower already. Because the wealth of Congo alone is equal to the wealth of China. The wealth just in Congo.
One district of Africa.
Yes, the wealth is enough to balance that of China. And you see the colonial states are not sustainable. For example, Buganda was a developed state, and they were even putting on back clothes. They had clothes. But then we added ourselves to nations which were maybe 500 years behind us. Are you see? And then we wanted to make that one nation. So if we wanted to make it one nation, then let's make the whole of Africa one nation. To dilute that one.
Ladies and gentlemen, we come to the end of tonight's show. See you again next Friday. But follow this show on Saturday on NBS TV from 4 to 5. My name is Andrew Irumba Katsobe, your speaker, and I'm signing out here. Thank you.